Hey, great day in the morning, everybody. We're right back on the scene with the Gospel Record Machine. My name is Brother Sam Tate. You're listening to Gospel Gems, where playing the gospel is what I do, and I like my job. By the way, friends, if you happen to be driving around out there today, thank you so very much for letting us ride along with you. After all, it takes people like you to make people like me, and I just want to thank Backstage rubbing shoulders with the stars and all. The disc jockeys, they were characters, but some of the artists that I've had a chance to meet, I used to drive the legendary Otis Redding around, sitting on the dock of the bay. James Brown knew I liked to fly. He'd let me go out and get on his Learjet. Michael Jackson, Jerry Butler, Solomon Burke, all of them. Joe Simon, who was the radio station for the interviews.
Welcome back, Brother Sam Tate. Your career in radio and announcing opened many doors that welcomed in some powerful names in the music and entertainment industry. We thank you for sharing some of your time to tell us about those experiences.
Well, thank you very much, Sister Addi. We're excited about being back with you once again today.
Wonderful. Yeah. Here's a name that is familiar to you. Dewey Markham was born in Durham, North Carolina, and he was known as Pigmeat Markham. And he was one of the funniest Black entertainers on the Chitlin circuit. He appeared in films and television, performing during the 1920s to the 1970s. Tell us how you met Mr. Pigmeat Markham.
Well, it was quite a few years ago, Sister Addi, but I was on the air at WEAL in Greensboro, North Carolina, and Pigmeat Markham and his sidekick, Baby Seal, were going to be at the local El Rocco Supper Club. So they came in that morning, and I interviewed him, and he was the funniest guy in the world. After we got off the air, it must have been about 10 o'clock that morning, went back in the back, the little office back there, and he started just talking about life in general. As you said, he's from Durham, North Carolina. And he said, he started talking about life in general. He said, you know something, Brother Sam, when I was a baby, I was an ugly baby. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I can't talk about anybody. He said, when I was a baby, I was an ugly baby. I was so doggone ugly that when we went out to recess, the kids would see me coming across the playground. And he said they would fall out laughing. And he said he found himself doing the natural things to do, starting to draw up into a shell, until it occurred to him one day, wait a minute, I can make people laugh, something you don't see people doing much anymore. And he said, on that day, I decided to become a comedian. And he said, today, I'm a millionaire. And he said, you know something, Brother Sam? I cries all the way to the damn bank. And the moral of the story, Sister Addi, is turn your disadvantages into advantages. And I'll never forgot that philosophy taught to me by the legendary Pigmeat Markham.
Thank you so much for sharing that. There's a message in that for all of us, because if there's one thing we're guaranteed is life is going to issue you some challenges. And so that's good advice for everybody, anytime.
Yeah, let me say this one thing that came to my mind. I guess the closest I ever came to having a nervous breakdown was during the Vietnam War, and Uncle Sam was after me. He finally got me. But I was in basic training for about 3 days, and it occurred to me, look, nobody's ever beat Uncle Sam yet. Who do I think I am? And the other thing was, what did old Pigmeat Markham teach me? Turn those disadvantages into an advantage. So I said, well, listen, I'm in Uncle Sam's army. I won't be making the kind of money I could in the real world, but there's some things Uncle Sam's going to do for me. He taught me how to fly, Sister Addi. He gave me an excellent position, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and other things like that. But he taught me how to fly airplanes. Uncle Sam, I turned that disadvantage into an advantage.
Yes, you did. And that's why with the privilege of meeting so many people who are successful, you get to pick up some of their wisdom that help you along the way. Now, thinking back to that man who accomplished so much, thinking back to that man with the kind of personality that he had, was he always on perform mode?
No, he really wasn't. And I guess that was one of the things that was so funny to me. I said, well, Brother Pigmeat Markham, can you and Baby Seal give us a preview of the coming attraction tonight at the El Rocco Supper Club? And Sister Addie, he got in character. And I mean, just like they were on stage, it was the funniest thing in the world. I had to back away from the microphone to keep from making a fool out of myself, laughing into the mic. But no, he was an everyday person until he got into character.
And you know what? He was a businessman. And see, he can joke, but he also had a serious side that propelled him into greatness. Thank you so much for that. Okay, let's switch gears just a little bit. The choking kind. Power of love. Get down, get down, get down on the floor. Drowning in the sea of love. Who did not love Joe Simon? Soul and R&B performer from the 1959 to the late 1990s. How did you meet Mr. Joe Simon?
I remember. That's a good question, Sister Addie. I was in Detroit and had the opportunity to interview him. And he started, even though he started singing in local clubs and all before then, but he started in rhythm and blues in a big way in 1964, which happened to be the same year I started in radio broadcasting. And we just sort of hit it off. And he later became, and we'll talk about it in a little while, he later became Bishop Joe Simon. But I said, Joe Simon, I know you're bishop now, but we started about the same time, man. I know too much about you. So I guess he just sort of felt he could let his hair down, around me. And for many years, up until he died on me, all of a sudden, we really had a great time. He started out, and I don't know if this is going to be your next question, but he started out not in California. He started out, he said he used to sing with a gospel group back in Louisiana, where he was from. And he said, they would go in like on Wednesday evening and record the Sunday morning gospel radio program for Sunday morning. And he said on that particular Wednesday evening, they were in the studio getting ready to record, but the lead singer was out sick and didn't show up. So all the guys said, Joe, you can lead that song. So he said he led the song and listened to the show back Sunday morning on the local radio station. And he said for the very first time in his life, he had a chance to listen to that unique voice. And the rest is history.
Absolutely. You know what? People say luck or fate, but you know what? Circumstances in our life that we can't explain sometimes opens that crack of a door that shows us who we are and what we can do. I'm glad he shared that with you. Yeah. So you were saying that you met in 64?
No, we met. It was probably around 2006 or 7 when we actually met in Detroit. But we both started in the entertainment world in 1964.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So you got to know him over a number of years. Tell me about that span of time.
Well, it was he had a testimony, Sister Addie, that he told that I always remembered. He said his very last engagement as an R&B singer was in New Orleans, and he said that night, and because after that he was going into the ministry full time, he said he came out, the little disc jockey said, and now, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the legendary Joe Simon. He said he came out on stage, grabbed the mic, turned around and told the band to hit the choking kind. Said the band struck up, boom, boom, boom. He said he couldn't think of one word. So he said, well, how about Drowned in the Sea of Your Love? The band struck up. Boom, he said he couldn't think of one word. He said, I'm starting to get nervous now. I'm starting to get pretty nervous. But he said, everybody knows, get down on the floor. Turned around, gave the cue to the band. He could not think of one word. What happened? The Holy Spirit robbed him of all that. He said it embarrassed him so bad. He said, ladies and gentlemen, I have a confession to make. This is my very last night as an R&B singer. After tonight, I'm going into the ministry full time. And, if you want your money back, you can get it as you go outside, go back out the door. He said, not one person wanted their money back. He said, but it got so quiet, Sister Addi, in the room that night. He said, you could hear a rat tinkle on cotton. He said, but excuse me, folks, I'm telling you what Joe Simon told me. He said, it got so quiet there. He said, finally, a little old lady jumped up and said, if Joe Simon going to go to preaching, I know I'm going back to church. And the house went up. That's how I got. But I also, he started going on the road with the Bishop Joe Simon Community Crusades. And he got me to go with him occasionally to help MC the program, the services. And I know, and out there on the road, we'll be riding in the car, and we would listen to the choking kind every now and then. He said, I will listen to that music, but I refuse to sing one lyric because I don't want to do anything that will remind me of that lifestyle. You know what I mean? And I really appreciated that because I know Joe Simon was serious.
You're telling us a whole lot of things in that little story. Number one, when a decision is made,
That's right.
Robbed of the lyrics of 3 songs that he
wrote.
That's a message. That's a sign and a sign and a sign. And then to evangelize too, I tell you what. Now, that was a night when we know who was in charge.
Yeah. Let me tell you, let me just mention this. When he finally came back home after that last engagement in New Orleans, he said he got his Bible and I don't know how many gallons of water, went downstairs in the basement of his home for about 3 weeks, nobody but just him and Jesus. And he said when he came back out, he said there was a glow around his face, and his family thought he was crazy. Some of them tried to put him into a mental hospital. They thought Joe was crazy. He said, but the other thing is so many of his so-called friends that he would help out, buying cars for him, because he was making $10,000 a night back in those years, buying cars, saving their homes from going into foreclosure and all. He said they were really upset because Joe Simon was no longer an ATM machine, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I thought that was interesting,
Yes, it is. I was going to ask you about the roller coaster of the industry, the music industry. He testified about the roller coaster of serving the Lord when others were expecting other things of him. And I'm glad he shared that with you because all of us have had experiences of being true to ourselves and being true to our Lord. So that kind of keeps us focused and encourages us that, yes, if Joe Simon had to go through it, then the rest of us as well.
Yeah, one of the hazards of the industry, Sister Addi, you speaking of the ups and downs, think about this, folks. You're out there on the road many times when you didn't want to. Many times I've been behind the mic over the years, not feeling good, upset with the program director, maybe even my wife. But when I hit that mic switch, you know, we had to be having a ball. So that's one of the hazards of the industry. You always have to always have to be on stage. That's why he enjoyed getting away and just letting his hair down, you know, when he would give it old brother Sam.
That was one of my questions. The glamorous world of entertainment may not be so glamorous all the time.
That's right. That's exactly right. And you know, I'm a witness. I can. Not that I've been a star, but you know, in radio since 1964, and the things that we've had to go through, you know, ups and downs. But it all it's. But you know, the interesting thing is almost like you know, a split personality. I'm feeling bad, but when I hit that mic switch, smile at the mic, get excited because that audience out there, they have their own problems. They don't need to listen to yours, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. And you've seen those who have succumbed to the pressure and
Yes,
those who have risen above it. And with Mr. Simon, he was able to walk away on his own terms. And
yes,
that's a
yes.
blessing right there.
Amen. Because he received Jesus before it was too late. Yeah. He said that so many of the other artists, Wilson Pickett, Otis Redding, and all, they thought that he was a little stuck up because he wouldn't get out there and drink and smoke with them. But, you know, that just wasn't his thing. You know, it just really wasn't his thing.
Well, what I read about him is that he began in the church.
Yeah.
And when you have that experience early in life, something stays inside of you. You know, you
Yeah.
raise up a child,
Yeah.
and so he just came back to his roots and his belonging. And
You're
so
right.
I'm glad he had the opportunity because sometimes people don't make it back.
You know when he started to preaching, though, Sister Addie, he started preaching about the age of 12. He said he was in the cotton fields in Louisiana, and he hated. He said, and even in his book, he wrote a book. He said he was lazy. He didn't want to live in no cotton field. But he said he would get on a stump as a little boy, and he would start to preaching. You know, and the bosses would get mad because all of the hired help out there in the cotton fields would stop working, looking at that and listening to that little boy preach. He back during those years, he had a calling on his life.
Calling. That is exactly the right word. A calling. And usually it comes early in life. And so
Amen.
I guess we can uh, divert to other things. But if you got that calling, you're going to have to come on back.
Oh yeah, you'll come on back. Yeah, no doubt
Oh,
about it.
oh,
Yeah.
mighty. That's wonderful. Anything else you want to share about Mr. Simon?
Uh, and I may have mentioned it a few moments ago. When he went to Oakland, California, he left the cotton fields. He went to Oakland, California, but he was so broke. Um, he started to, you know, working, singing a little in the clubs and all. But he was so broke, he had to borrow his room. He and his roommate literally lived in a chicken coop, and he had to borrow his roommate's suit and shoes to go on stage. But then in 1964, he recorded My Adorable One, and he sang at the Apollo Theater. And he said, after that, the rest is history. That's how he really got started.
You know, I don't know too many folk who have a vision that will make those kind of sacrifices.
Yeah.
But you've heard the stories of more than a few, and we're going to talk about a few more of those. I'm going to shift once again. James Bignon, songwriter and arranger, is best known for his Grammy, Stella nominated, and Billboard Gospel Chart hit recordings of God is Great, On the Other Side of Through, What a Mighty God We Serve, Miracle, How Excellent is Thy Name, and others. He made a name for himself in the gospel music industry as the director of music of the world-renowned Georgia Mass Choir. Now, Brother Tate, you had the opportunity to befriend this contributor to gospel greatness. Tell us the stories.
Well, that's a good question, Sister Addie. Of course, as many of you know, I host a nationally syndicated oldie goldie black gospel radio show called Gospel Gems. And, Aretha Franklin, Sam Cooke, Mississippi, and Georgia Mass Choir and all. So I had the opportunity to play much of the music. But the way that I really had a chance to build up a rapport with him, I have been living for years in Boone, North Carolina, which is up in the mountains, and it's the home of Appalachian State University. So he came up for 4 or 5 days and did a workshop with the choir, with the local choir. And it was a tremendous workshop, and I had the opportunity, to spend time with him. I remember one day, I wanted him to do a voiceover for some public service announcements, and he came by the radio station, my station there, and I said, well, James, while I'm in the studio getting everything set up, stand by because I'll be back in just a minute. I got everything set up for him to record, Sister Addie. When I came back, the guy was laying on the couch, sleep, calling the hogs, man. I said, man, get up, come on, get in.
Good. Well, you know what? When you have talent and when you have something that people need, then you're called on. He was tucked out. He was much in demand. And so when he had a chance to close his eyes and get really comfortable, then he was out. But like all of us, you turn the light back on and you get back on the mic or on the stool or on the whatever. Now, tell me something. You have rubbed shoulders with those in the secular and not. What is your impression about the two different genres in terms of those who perform in those genres?
Yeah. Well, if we look back in the history of so many of the artists from Aretha Franklin on, most of them, many of them started out in the church, and then they went into the secular world. And if they live long enough, now Sam Cooke didn't, they go back to the church. Many of them go back to the church, but they all, if they were serious about, their faith and all, that has a tendency to come out, And so that's one of the things I remember.
I would suggest that perhaps those singing gospel may have a different orientation to life and behavior than perhaps the secular. What do you think?
Yes, that is if they were serious about Jesus, Now, some just did it because that's the way to make money, For example, I remember watching the Ed Sullivan Show many years ago, and I've always been a Sam Cooke fan. And Ed asked him, "Why did you quit singing gospel and go into rhythm and blues?" And Sam Cooke said, "Right quick, for the money." You know what I mean? So it would have been great. I wish he would have stayed in gospel. Just using that as a typical example,
Well, yes, and but we also know that the money is in the record sales,
Yes,
and the fame and the fortune.
yes.
You mentioned earlier about Joe Simon recording for the Sunday morning broadcast. You and I are of an age where Sunday morning quartets on the radio was an amazing time to be alive. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Sunday morning, and being in radio for many years, Wednesday evening was always a time when most of the gospel groups would come in and pre-record come in and pre-record their shows. But speaking of Joe Simon, he was on VJ Records many years ago on that label, and then VJ went bankrupt. It went belly up. And I don't know, we talked about this before, Sister Addie. Many of the audience out there, if you grew up in down south in the mid 50s, 60s, and all, the only place we could get rhythm and blues and good black gospel and all was WLAC in Nashville, Tennessee. You probably remember John R. and Horseman Allen and all. 90% of the audience thought that those guys were black, but they were just as white as could be, but had more soul than many of us. But anyway, I asked Joe during the interview in Detroit, I said, Brother Joe, explain to us why John R. would play Joe Simon back during those years if he didn't play anybody else. He said, because John R. and I own Joe Simon. They were business partners. So Joe, because VJ Records was belly up and nobody was playing the music anymore, but John R. was on WLAC, which is a big 50,000 watt, went into Mexico, throughout the South and all, and it kept Joe Simon alive, so to speak.
I have heard you talk about this announcer and his personal impact on your life. You want to tell us about that?
Okay, yeah. Well, as long as I can remember Sam Tate, I don't know, 3.5 or 4 years old, I've been fascinated with microphones. I wanted to be a radio announcer. And so I used to listen to John R. I didn't have any John R. voice, but I wanted to be like the old John R. And I had a chance to actually speak to him and tell him that he was my idol shortly before he passed. But yeah, I remember I grew up on the farm, ladies and gentlemen, and I can remember going around on the farm broadcasting in an old stick and a corn cob, you know, trying to be like John R. I had it bad. But then when I went to A&T State University, ironically, the Soul Station was only 1 mile from A&T's campus. So in between classes and all, I lived at the radio station, and nobody would help me. But then finally, some of the older guys sort of took me in under their wing and let me sit down behind the mic. And then I started taking, once I got pretty good at it, learned what to do, I started taking all the shifts that nobody else wanted. Who will sign on Christmas morning? I will. Easter Sunday, I will, you know. And then I started filling in for the guys going on vacation, the morning man, afternoon man, news man, gospel man, whatever. But at the end of the summer, the boss realized there's only one person around the station who can do anybody's job. That little old guy who hangs around the station. Somebody got fired, and that's how I got started in the industry. And it's been one of the most interesting professions I've ever been in, between that and commercial aviation.
You know what? You're telling the story that we have been talking about. How do you become a great person in a competitive industry? You work twice as hard as others. You make yourself available. You learn everything that you can. And you are good at what you do, or shall I say, excellent at what you do. I thank you. Whatever your age, be you a child figuring things out or someone our age, these are lessons that we need to hear on a regular basis. I thank you so much, Brother Tate.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, Sister Addie.
All right, and we're going to keep on talking.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Join us as we continue to learn about great entertainers through the lens of Brother Sam Tate. In our third interview, we will highlight Otis Redding, Michael Jackson, Jerry Butler, and Solomon Burke.